which I later figured out was kind of a minor scale and a major scale. And a lot of my songs go back and forth between those two scales. There's a song off my first album, Acoustic Highway, that goes between an A minor and a C major. And really, they're the same box. There's like a little box right here that's sort of the pentatonic scale when you're in the minor. Like from A minor to D to A minor. You can play in this little box. These are sort of simple versions, but just to give you the idea of the box. But also, now, in C major, you can use the same box. So here's a C major to an F major, same box. And it's really a minor and a major, depending on where you end up. So this one song I wrote called Sacred Ground really has this feeling of the minor, the mysteriousness of a minor key, and sort of the adventure and the happiness of a major key, back and forth. And if you're familiar with my album, you might recognize this song. That was all in the minor key, and it's just this one simple little melody that bases off this A minor chord. You really only move your finger a couple of times and just hold that chord. And that's the melody. It's that simple. But there's different places to play that. You can voice it down here with a slightly different tone that makes it more interesting. Or you can play with octaves. So that's the minor part of the song. Now from there, it goes to the C major, or it goes playing off the C major position up here, and it goes into, out of the minor part. To the C major part. So there you have it. There's like the happy scale and the sad scale. And to me, it reflects a mood. And the story I try to tell with this song, Sacred Ground, is a feeling that, back to that idea that you can't turn up the feeling or the emotion knob. So you have to, I think, as a musician, you draw from these experiences and you express it in the language of music. And in that way, you communicate to the listener. And to me, that's way more important than playing really fast or really flashy, although that is a big part of my style, and it definitely was with Starship. I've found now that that's more a way to create an exclamation point at the end of a melodic statement. To me, listening to somebody play fast all the time, you know, it's kind of like listening to somebody type really fast. You know, you're kind of impressed at first, but then you say to yourself, well, what are they really saying? You know, and do you want to reread it? And does it, you know, invite your imagination to experience, you know, some kind of emotion or feeling? So this song, to me, even though it has some flashy elements, I'll show you a little later, the basic idea is that the simple melody tries to convey a feeling of sacred ground, which was inspired by being out in the country, late afternoon, early sunset with my acoustic guitar and seeing the sky change colors from turquoise to gold to magenta, like the stained glass of a cathedral, and listening to the wind whispering in the trees above me and this little creek in the canyon below me, and around me all the wild animals coming out at night. It's kind of that area between day and night that the Indians thought was very magical, that the crow would fly between, inviting you to leave the reality of the day and go to the mysteries and the dreams of the night. And that whole mystery And that feeling, and gave me goosebumps like it is right now. And hopefully the music does too, because that's the feeling I try to convey with this minor key, the mystery. And then the major is like the sense of wonder as the stars come out, you know, the Milky Way is everywhere. And listening to the sound of the wind in the creek, I realized that Native Americans worshipped the spirit of the wind in the trees and the spirit of the creek in the canyon and lived in harmony with that symphony of nature. And that was the feeling I wanted to put into this song. And by using the minor key and the major key, I think it kind of comes across. And I also went in and did sound effects on the song that created that sound of, you know, the Clint Eastwood birds coming out at night. Which is another way, you know, to paint these musical pictures with the guitar. You know, create sounds that remind the listener of, you know, the theme that you're talking about. You know? So all of this stuff's in this record, if you buy the record, and you can hear, like, there's stuff at the end where I tried to make the sound of frogs, like in the creek, to really create this mood musically of going somewhere else. Like, so many kids have grown up listening to music and watching MTV that they think that's where they should get all their images, but sometimes you can get better images by using the theater of your mind and your imagination, and that's what I try to evoke with my music. Because when I grew up, before MTV, I'd listen to Jimi Hendrix, Pink Floyd, and I would completely trip out totally on a natural high just listening to music, and it was always the imagination that would take you to these wonderful places. So I try to create these areas in my songs in stereo, left and right, you know, another world that invites you to go to these places as well. And I made sounds like frogs in the background with all the melody going on. Now, if you listen to the song, there's all this stuff in the background. I came off the mountain and where I experienced this beautiful sunset and started recording this song, and I was sitting there with my headphones on making frog sounds on the guitar. My wife came into the studio, and I didn't know she was there, and she thought I'd lost it. She thought, yeah, he's been in the Starship too long. That's it. He's never coming back. But then she heard the song. She realized what was going on. So as you listen to this song on the record, or when I play it, maybe you'll be reminded of the beauty of nature and the fact that it all still is very much sacred ground. And that's the message. That's the feeling that comes through in a melody and in a song, more than just technique. But the song also has some technique in it, like some finger tapping. If you listen to it in the melody, and it goes from the major to the minor. It's a little kind of solo, little Clint Eastwood vibe where it goes. So there you have it, the minor and the major keys, a lot of open strings. I'm basically playing off that box again for both keys, and when I go to the C major, I kind of use the C major just like a little mini bar chord, not quite the whole bar chord, just the top strings. And then I leave the open E and let the open strings help me out by going. And doing some suspensions like that. But it's really very simple and very effective. You know, sometimes the most simple things can be very effective. And it's just that C chord and going back and forth between and. It's great playing acoustic guitar again, because when I played electric, I was always muting strings because of the volume levels. If you weren't playing something, it was going to be ringing and making noises and feeding back. But the acoustic, it's kind of interesting, actually, to have all the rest of the strings sympathize and vibrate and come alive, and you can let a lot of open strings ring, you know. And it's amazing, because the guitar really starts to act like an accompanist by adding these overtones and stuff. And also, there's a little area I want to focus on of just some finger tapping that occurs later in that song, Sacred Ground. And it's really pretty simple to do. It's like you tap the string up here, and you you're basically hammering off and using this open E string a lot. I use that a lot in my style, lots of open strings and getting extra, twice as many notes by getting that open string every time. And that's basically how the hammer-on works. It's a, or you can pick it once here and hammer on with these 3 fingers, and then hit it again. So that's kind of the figure. And then sometimes you can hit it twice up here to give it kind of a little rolling feel. And move it down to the next string, but up 1 fret here. And you can use the open B a little bit, so it's like, and then. You can just keep going down the neck and getting that effect. And it's kind of interesting. Obviously, this is an electric guitar technique, right? Well, since I've been playing the acoustic guitar, I've had 2 solo albums that both were #1 in Billboard, and the new one, Acoustic Planet, was actually nominated for a Grammy. And it's interesting because it's in like the new age category, and I get played on smooth jazz stations, and I tour with these awesome jazz guys on the road. But to me, it's all rock and roll. I mean, the first new age music I ever heard was the instrumental work of Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd and Jimi Hendrix, you know. And so I take a lot of these techniques, electric guitar techniques now, and play them on the acoustic guitar, and they have a different flavor. And man, I mean, I'm doing concerts with these like just killer jazz guys, saxophone players, and they've never really, you know, been that aware of a lot of the Van Halen stuff, you know. So they hear me doing it, and they think it's like they're going, wow, what is that thing? And I tell them it's just something I came up with. No, but it's great. It just goes to show that you can take influences from electric guitar, you know, apply it to the acoustic, and you have a totally different flavor. I mean, everyone has their influences, and it's what you do with it that gives it your own style and your own personality. So you'll see throughout my playing on the tape, I'm using lots of finger tapping and open strings and harmonics, a lot of, you know, basically electric guitar techniques, really. Here's a song that I like to play that's also on my first album, and it's really quite simple. It was written by a 12-year-old boy who could only reach 1 string on the guitar. He was hit by a drunk driver, and when he woke up in the hospital after being unconscious for 3 days with a cerebral concussion, the first thing he asked for, with 2 broken arms, a broken thumb, and a broken wrist, and a leg that was broken in 3 places, was for his acoustic guitar. And his doctor realized something, besides the fact that it was good for his circulation, I think she realized something that musicians and all of us have known for a long time, and that is that music can be very healing, both emotionally and physically. And so for this little boy's, through his wheelchair therapy and his crutches therapy and his corrective shoes and finally back to normal, the guitar was a great companion. And he played constantly. And he wrote this song all on 1 string because it was the only string he could reach with both hands in cast. He could only reach the high E string. And I know a lot about this little boy because I was the little boy. This is something that happened to me 28 years ago. And since my first album came out, people have told me how helpful my music has been for them during similar physical recoveries. And it reminded me of this song and my doctor, Elizabeth, who had to hear the song over and over again. And the song was written entirely on the E string. So since her name was Elizabeth and it's on the E string, I kind of have subtitled it E Elizabeth Song. And it's interesting to me now because I didn't realize it at the time, but by playing just on 1 string, you're sort of forced to explore all the different patterns and all the ways to make that 1 string talk. And it's neat because the 1 string actually invites the rest of the guitar to resonate, even though you're not playing the other strings.